Oxford and Cambridge Alumni Society, Czech Republic. And I'm really happy to welcome Edel today with us, who is the Dean of the Psychology at the New York University in Prague, and she's also lecturer at Charles University. She is graduate of Columbia University as well as Cambridge University, and so she's one of us as well. And she has done a lot of research in the connection between music and humor. Moreover, she's an opera singer, and today she's going to explain us something more about this connection between music and humor. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. Before I begin my talk, I feel compelled to share a concern of mine. It will just take a moment. Please bear with me. What can we more females do when percentages in love show? What can we poor females do? What can we poor females do? Beautiful but denying or complying. What can we poor females do when percentages in love show? What can we poor females do? What can we poor females do? And resenting or consenting, and resenting or consenting, knows a lie, our hopes betrayed. What can we poor females do when percentages in love show? What can we poor females do? What can we poor females do? Thank you. I thought I must sing Purcell as an honor to honor England, one of my favorite composers from England. And based on this topic, which is indeed the link between humor and music, perhaps, if we look at the brain, perhaps a touch of dopamine was activated, perhaps some endorphins, we'll see, but at least I did see smiles on people's faces. So I think when I mentioned a visceral experience, I think we need to, if we're going to talk about music, it's nice to hear a bit of music. So indeed, in the introduction, what happens to, in our brain when we laugh, what happens when we make music, and how can we also create these moments of joy through music and or comedy, and and so we'll explore some of these ideas. I'll touch upon some research that I've done, but also some recent research that's out there. And I will, since we're in Prague, open also with add a quote by Kafka, who said, "A book should serve as the axe for the frozen sea within us." And I agree, but would like to add that a smile and a song should also serve to release the frozen sea within us. So let's then talk about a bit more of the bit of just a bit of the neuroscientific aspect of it. For example, when we laugh, multiple regions of the brain are activated. The frontal cortex, which includes both the reasoning, but also it includes the emotional centers, the amygdala, the hippocampus. So we naturally, it's related to emotional responses. We also, the parietal lobe is involved. It's interpreting the words, and we have also the physical aspect of laughing. If you think of it, it's very interesting looking at an X-ray of a person laughing, and in fact, looking at an X-ray of a person talking, and then looking at a person laughing. It's completely different motor mechanisms, completely different. Well, it's said that they're completely different. When you look at it, you're really noticing that. When I was looking at the X-rays of it, though, it was in an fMRI machine, and fMRI, sorry, functional magnetic resolution imaging, and the person was frozen. So the commonalities between singing, making music, especially singing and laughing, involve the torso, but the torso was frozen in this fMRI machine. So just this upper body used, again, totally different parts. So it can be related to more primal, perhaps, and many non-human animals have been shown to laugh, such as other primates, even rats. There's a lot of, if you tickle a little rat, he will have a laugh response, and it's very, very sweet. And it takes many, many hours to study all these different species, but there's many dogs, for example, they smile, it's related to the actual emotion. Of course, we can misread. Sometimes primates, when they look like they have a smile, they're actually grimacing. So we have to be careful, such as the poor guy that went up to the moon and they thought, oh, he's smiling, he must have enjoyed it. Well, he hadn't. But in terms of laugh response, you can tell when they want more. When you want to be tickled again, or they're asking for more, and it's not that difficult to study. So we do see it in non-human animals as well, and again, very much activation is going on, and as I mentioned, endorphins and dopamine is also released, and the feel-good neurotransmitters. And if we look at evolution, why might laughter have developed? What good does it do? We can think in our minds, but so for example, if danger passes, we'll laugh, like a relief. Oh, there's a bit of laughter, or but clearly it unites us. It's a social mechanism. In fact, when we laugh, we are inhibiting the fight or flight hormones, such as cortisol is inhibited. And so it strengthens human connections, so it makes sense. And it's a way of signaling as well. If you laugh at a joke, then people are connected, and if you don't, it can be a disconnect. And so, in fact, people with brain disorders or psychopaths, for example, don't laugh very much. We'll go to the extremes. But it is a social signal and a behavioral activity that connects us. And I won't go into all of it, but there's many health results as well. Even just from emotional well-being, a person's going to get health benefits just from the mind-body connection, which is continuing to be shown more and more. But even direct effects, for example, when you're laughing, cells that destroy tumors and viruses are disintegrated, antibodies increase, and so in addition to more health responses. So let's compare then what happens in the brain with music. What I find fascinating, because music is really where I began my studies, especially more with the neural mechanisms, but also behaviorally, and how it affects how learning music transfers to other areas of people's lives, such as academics, etc. But so it is very interesting to see the relationships. So for example, definitely the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, also the processing of language if it's a music with song, with words, and since this song had lyrics in English, we probably could understand them if my enunciation was clear enough. But the same thing, motor cortex, cerebellum activated, just sitting there listening to music. In fact, while I sang that song, your motor cortexes were activated, cortices, and your cerebellums would have been activated too. See, why is that? If we go back to evolution, when I made music now, I had to use my muscles. I was using motor activity, but often when we made music, we would play drums, and if you see children, they can't keep still, even playing Swan Lake for them. They just have to roll around or move. We learn through society's restrictions. No. I've taught in primary school for many years, hearing teachers, no. So don't make sounds, don't move. We go to classical concerts and you're all supposed to sit there. But actually, that's why we want to move, especially if there's a beat, of course. And if we look at the evolution within the life of a human, the first thing we hear, what do you think the first thing we hear is? It's rhythmic. Heartbeat, yes. At 5 months in the womb, we hear our mother's heartbeat. No wonder we like rhythm. I have a little dream I'm going to be adding rhythm to more classical music, to kind of, liven it up. There is rhythm in classical music, definitely, but to add even, why not more percussion instruments? Why not combine? But so it is very, very interesting. Again, the connections with both humor and music with the brain. Music activates dopamine, the feel-good hormone. It functions as a neurotransmitter, but it's also known, it's referred to sometimes as a hormone. So in research, I've done a lot of research in education and with development of children, and again, I've focused on transfer to academic effects, but I'm very moved by the emotional effects and the other effects as well, beyond academia. But so again, when I have looked at the research on, I've again been very familiar with the research on music education, but when I looked at using humor in education, again, I was pleasantly surprised at also the parallel. I always like to, as a theoretical foundation, I like to refer to the brain, because behavior comes from the brain. And even when you think a sound, of course the brain is activated, but even the vocal folds move. So I've always been interested in that. But what was really enjoyable for me to see when I was asked to to include humor in actually the TED Talk that I did more research on humor in classrooms as well, and similarly creates a sense of community, which makes sense, creates positive atmosphere, a sense of wonder, encourages of creativity, even it aids memory. And if we think memory, for example, both music and humor help memory, and the hippocampus is very close to the amygdala, and so which is the emotional center, so that can make sense in that sense as well. In addition to it being used directly as a memory aid, but also just overall well-being and learning. So, for example, when I did research at a poor region in New Jersey, the New York area, these students were very young. They were 5, 6, and 7, and they, again, because of maybe their poor background, a lot of them were immigrants, they had not had any music training. So it was a very good setup situation for a study. So we had large schools. It expanded into 5 large schools in which they had 2 classes of about 30 each. So it was great because you had your sample size of of minimum. You need 30. So one was the actual experimental group that had the music lessons, and the other was a control group. They had other things, other activities they would do in their school. But after the first year, we noticed their scores were shot way ahead of the other, in mathematics particularly, but also even in language, even though it was their second language. And so we expanded it to compare them to the entire state, which is an interesting state because it's the most, has some of the poorest regions, which is where I was studying, doing the research, but it also has some of the most wealthy regions. And so we can assume, and even statistics show, that the wealthier the family, the more likely they might have had music lessons already. But nonetheless, even with multiple disadvantages, also single-parent households, violence in the city, etc., they kept up, if not a little, even a tiny bit more in some cases, with scores in mathematics and language arts that with the other areas of New Jersey. So that inspired me. But again, what was even more touching is when we interviewed the students, and that's when I saw beyond the academic effects of well-being, the confidence that one little girl who previously wasn't comfortable speaking in front of people, now she played with a violin with a big orchestra, so now she started to speak up in class. Or the boy who didn't get along with his father, but once he started playing violin, they got along because his father played guitar. So there were many touching examples like that I was very encouraged by, and continue to, with my PhD in England, want to look at more of the causes of the specifics behind it, which we won't go into, but why music does that beyond its effect. Dopamine, what is it about music that can increase mathematical skills? Of course, we look at problem solving, and we look at pattern recognition, and we look at proportional understanding. Those are three key areas that overlap in both areas of, so it makes sense, but my study looked at it more closely. So if we then go back, and again, if I'm doing a comparative brief analysis, we go back to the health benefits and of the elderly. So I'm talking about the youth, but let's look at the elderly as well, or people who are ill. And there's, of course, the very famous story of Norman Cousins, who had a very serious illness, and he watched humorous movies all day. Along with vitamin C, but they, so he had, he claimed that, after just even 10 minutes of robust laughter, he was able to finally sleep pain-free, and morphine hadn't even helped him. So he ended up overcoming the disease and really wrote an anatomy of an illness and really kind of brought it to light, the healing power of music. Well, in the world of music therapy, we also see the healing power of music therapy. Oliver Sacks wrote a lovely book called Musicophilia, in which he gives many examples of the healing effect. One, for example, Alzheimer's patients and dementia patients. It's such a powerful activator of the emotional center that the healing element, the memories it activates, especially if the person chooses music they like, it activates positive memories, which of course, music can also activate negative memories, but when in therapy, they choose the music that they like, and it's amazing to see the faces of people who otherwise perhaps had a blank stare or were not remembering things, but they remember how to play a Chopin piece, or they remember how to sing that song, or and the words will come back. Even people with stroke victims who have lost their ability to speak when they sing the words, they are able to speak. And so what some of the therapy is that then they, as if it's like intoning. So if you think of, if music, be the food of love, if you start by intoning, and then if music be the food of love, I brought it from singing to slight singing to intoning to talking. So that's a way that, because a different part of the brain is activated, so we're stuck on the idea of the left side of the brain for language, which is true, that much of it is activated there. But music also activates the right side of the brain. So in using that part of the brain, a person can go back and access the other part of the brain. I am a big advocate, and I love to celebrate the plasticity of the brain. And again, I think with both humor, but I've also seen with, again, looking at therapeutic effects of music, therapy, it's astonishing to see the healing that can happen with, again, memory ability and also emotional ability, communicative ability. So it's